Before I begin, I would like to try a small experiment with all of you. Nothing complicated, very simple. So, are you all ready? So, for the next few seconds, we are all going to take a pause. Now, when I say pause, don't try to empty your thoughts. Don't try to calm your mind. Just notice what happens when there is nothing to do. Are you all ready? Start. Wonderful. Thank you. And as you went through this exercise, I am sure some of you felt some blankness. Some of you looked around to see whether others were following through. Some others felt the silence of the room. And probably some of you must have been wondering how much this silence is going to last. And that is the point. I think so the greatest crisis today in our world is not that technology is evolving faster than us. I think so the greatest crisis I see is the human mind losing its ability to pause and thus to focus and to choose. I think so it all started with the search engines and social media. Faster answers, faster decisions, faster reactions. And today we know that AI is making speed exponential. But I think somewhere along the way, we are losing something more valuable, the ability to pause, the ability to reflect. No, make no mistake, we do pause. We do that by booking a spa, going on a holiday, or binge watching a series. But earlier, our ancestors knew really how to pause, not to escape the world, but to understand it. Till today, we are fascinated how our ancestors could reveal the secrets of the universe. Impossible without technology. Our people could explore the outer world, the way the planets are, the orbits, the calculations, through pure sophisticated observation and reflection skills. But we could also explore the inner world. What is yoga finally? What is yoga? Yoga is nothing but a fascinating combination of mental, physical, and spiritual process that is gifted to mankind. And this reflection allowed us to understand both the universe outside and the universe within. In fact, one of the most timeless insights ever shared, written thousands of years ago, where we were already warned that a mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. Not because the mind is good or bad, but because when the mind left unobserved, when left to its five senses, is going to run on autopilot. And when it runs on autopilot, choice disappears. I think so we live in a world where constant engagement is normal, right? We check our phones when doing nothing. We multitask between thoughts. We move from one input to the next. And slowly, almost quietly, our ability to reflect, to pause, and to observe is disappearing. But something else happens when we add another element. And that element is pressure. Now let's take an example of a cricket match. A batsman needs 20 runs to win off 12 balls with only 2 wickets remaining. Now nothing too difficult, right? His plan would be to preserve his wicket, take the game deep. And his game plan would be a couple of boundaries, a few singles, and he still has got some time before he can close the game. Now imagine this is a final of a tournament. And you will agree that now this batsman would start feeling that pressure more than in a normal match. But think about it. The situation hasn't changed, his ability hasn't changed, and the task hasn't changed. What has changed? Once pressure enters the orbit, the experience of that moment feels completely different. But why does that happen? Because pressure basically is changing perception. When light passes through a medium, for example, a prism, what happens? It changes, it bends. Light is the same, but now it's distorted. This distortion is exactly what a player feels when he feels under pressure. And in my work with elite athletes, I have seen this repeatedly. Players prepare intensely, they do everything that is required. And then, when that moment comes that matters, that one decision at that moment in time, what surprises the player is this: my body hasn't failed. What has failed is focus. And I have heard this line many times: Sir, I knew what to do, but my mind just wasn't there. Wasn't where? Where did the mind go? Think about it. The mind went into outcomes, into judgment, into fear. And in that distortion of shift, what the player lost was choice. And when the player loses that choice, he swings at a wrong ball, he gets out. And this is how pressure impacts reality. And this player comes back saying, Sir, I don't know what happened. But think about this, all of you. This I don't know what happened feeling is not just with players, with people like all of us. I don't know how I kept scrolling for hours together. I don't know how that notification shifted me from the work I needed to do. So how do we make better choices in these moments? And the answer comes from determining how I can help my mind to focus at the right thing at that moment in time. And just as athletes have situations to deal with, people also have situations to deal with in their life, isn't it? Because I truly believe that people want to perform to their best to overcome their life's challenges. But just as pressure distorts in sport, technology distorts in life. But this technology by itself is not its enemy, because what it has done is something extraordinary. It has expanded what we as humans can do. But every technology is like a prism that's distorting how we think, how we choose, and how we see. So what we are experiencing today is not information overload. It is erosion of attention. My athletes and leaders, all high-performing individuals, they are not coming and saying, Sir, I don't know what to do. They are saying, I know what to do, but I'm unable to do it when it matters. That's not a knowledge problem. That's a decision-making problem. And this happens when speed becomes the norm and mind doesn't have time to choose. It reacts. And that's how a directionless mind is formed. Quietly, slowly. I think so that what people are struggling today is not intent or effort. What I see people struggling is the ability to choose well. Life still moves forward. Work still gets done. You will all keep performing. But what changes is the clarity of what I'm choosing and what is the cost of that choice to my life. I think so what is important today is to understand that people are recognizing this. People want to change. Look at all the gigabytes of videos that are being consumed by all of us to change ourselves. Look at the number of self-help books that are being sold into millions. But I don't think so we need more information now. Neither do I think that we need more motivation. What we need is simply our ability to shift our attention to things we really want rather than go directionless towards what technology wants us to do. That's all that is required. But how do you do that? And let's therefore go back to that cricket match. For that player who wants to hit 20 runs of 12 balls, does he need more confidence or positive thinking? No. What he needs on the ground practically is a 3-second pause before he bats and reacts. Not to calm down, not to feel better, but to have that pause to bring attention back to the present moment. One breath, one anchor, and one immediate action point. And this is exactly what happened with a player of mine who came to me when I was working with an IPL team. And after a couple of games besides the pool, he came up to me in his South African accent and he said, "Hey doc, I wanted to check with you, whether what I can do with my decision making. I'm having some challenges under pressure." And this is exactly what I worked on him, trained on him for a few days. And after a few games later, he walks to me again and saying, "Hey doc, I still feel the pressure." I said, "Okay, but now it doesn't affect my decision making anymore." And that's what is important to understand. Because the goal is not to silence the mind under pressure. That's a wrong perception. The goal is to direct our mind under pressure. That cricket player wins the game not by not feeling pressure, but by training the mind to focus on the right choice every time using the 3-second pause. This is what changes performance in sport, but this might also change performance in our life. Today we talk a lot about mindfulness, manifestation, self-discipline. But I don't think so. Modern science has invented these ideas. We have rediscovered them. What we call today mindfulness was once called dhyan, not relaxation, not escape, but sustained awareness in the present. What we call attention training was called dharana, the ability to hold the mind steady on one and only one thing. What we call detachment from outcomes was vairagya, not indifference, but freedom from connecting actions to outcomes. And what we call deep focus was ekagrata, the capacity to be single-minded in action for a period of time. But all this happened naturally that time as a result of the natural pauses that were built into our life. The rhythms of activity were beautifully integrated with boundaries of inactivity and reflection. But today our world is designed differently. This silence of inactivity is replaced with pleasure. Seeking daily pleasure is what people are actively seeking. Binge watch has become a status. We are more attentive to other people's lives than our own. But what we need to understand is this. This pleasure today is no longer accidental. It is engineered. We need to be mindful of it. I once heard an interview of a senior executive of a global streaming OTT platform. And what he said was striking. He said the biggest competitor of a platform is sleep. Think about it. Let this sink in. Not another platform, not another app, but sleep. That tells us something important, that your focus is no longer just influenced, it is competed for. And because these technology systems are designed to keep us engaged in comfort, in ease, and in pleasure, it is pulling us away from something which is more fundamental to us as humans, and that is purpose. Purpose. But purpose is tough, right? Purpose requires perseverance, it requires persistence, it requires presence. Pleasure asks none of these. And therefore, for you to really get back that control of your life that is deliberately designed to pull you towards pleasure, you will need to do something consciously, like that athlete who needs to deal with pressure in a conscious manner. And that choice, therefore, today needs to become a deliberate practice. You know, somewhere along the way, we were sold a very simple idea that happiness is the goal. But sometimes when happiness becomes the goal, it turns to pleasure. And pleasure becomes the mean to reaching this momentary happiness every day. In my experience, the more desperately we try to be happy, the more fragile we become. Real happiness does not come from pleasure. It comes from meaning, right? Meaning to what you want to really do in life. And therefore, every time you make this choice of foregoing that momentary notification, stopping the scrolling, stopping that binge watch, you need to create a pause to choose meaning over that momentary pleasure. But how do you really do this in real life, practically? Not in theory, not in philosophy. So I think so, why don't you all try this today? Every time you react to that notification that triggers you, use the 3-second pause. Before you switch from one task to another without thinking, use the 3-second pause. Before you reach for distraction out of habit, use the 3-second pause. Just 3 seconds. One breath, one awareness, and one step back that tells you, do I really need this? And whenever you're not doing anything, don't do anything. Nothing. Don't take out your mobile. Just pause, reflect, observe. And all of this is going to help you get back from that impulse, from that habit, from that automatic reaction. And this one thing is not a small training tool. I think so this can be an extremely powerful moment for you every day. Because it is that moment every day that's going to help you choose between pleasure and purpose, between a directionless mind and a purpose-driven life. I think so there is a very powerful idea in the Bhagavad Gita that captures this beautifully. It says that when the mind keeps chasing impulses arising from the senses, wisdom is carried away. But when the mind is steadied, action becomes clear. Today, that responsibility I feel has quietly shifted to this new generation. A generation that you are all growing up with. Extraordinary technology, unlimited information, unprecedented speed. And the question is therefore today not what the world will offer you, but how you will meet this world. With a reactive mind or with a trained one. Because the future today, my friends, is not going to be shaped by the busiest minds. It's going to be shaped by minds who can step back, pause, and reflect and make the right choices. In a world that is constantly pulling you at your attention, learning to direct your mind is not a luxury, it is a responsibility. And perhaps it is the most important work we can do for ourselves and for the world that we are shaping. Thank you.